Firstly, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Kaya, hello. Welcome to Real Talk Hour, made possible by Indigenous Business Australia, which hosts a series of online topics that's to celebrate and share what is happening in our communities. To kick off, we are talking to some of our talented fashion designers and successful models to yarn about all things fashion, from running a business in fashion, their experience at the recent Australian Fashion Week, overcoming challenges, and the vision for the future. I am your host, Nathan McGuire. I'm a proud Wajak Noongar man from Burraloo, which is Perth. And I greeted you in my language, Kaya, which means hello. And today I want to welcome our panel guests to the Real Talk Hour. Firstly, we have Felicia Foxx, a Kamilaroi and Dunghutti woman from Campbelltown. Felicia is a drag performer and advocate for LGBTQI+ people in that First Nations and broader community. We have Liandra Gaykamangu, a Yolngu woman from Northeast Arnhem Land. Liandra is the creative director, founder and designer of Liandra Swim. We have Samantha Harris, a Dunghutti woman from the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. Sam is one of Australia's most successful models and paved the way for many Indigenous models and creators in this Australian fashion industry.
Hi.
Hey, Sam. We have Corina Muir, a Yorta Yorta and Boon Wurrung woman. She is a designer, nature protector, campaigner, mother, and founder of ethical label Amber Days. So, First Nations fashion is trending right now following Australian Fashion Week, after history was made with the first Indigenous runways, led by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and starring an all-Indigenous cast from designers and models to those behind the scenes in production, hair and makeup, stylists and assistants. In its 25-year history, we saw the first ever Welcome to Country for Fashion Week, as well as designer featured in 2 runway showcases with First Nations fashion design and Indigenous fashion projects. Such an iconic moment. It was such a pleasure to be a part of. And I want to give a shout out to everybody who made that possible. So I'd like to open this first question up to everyone. And we'll start with Felicia. What was your favorite moment from Australian Fashion Week?
Just for me, being there and being visible at Australian Fashion Week, being a trans Aboriginal model and a storyteller, because I don't see myself as just an entertainer or just someone who is, navigating through these, places being a drag queen or being an entertainer or an artist. I see myself carrying on from what our ancestors have done, telling our stories through art, through expression. So for me, being visible and being able to represent not only the Aboriginal community, but the LGBT community, for me was the most amazing thing.
That's fantastic. And you created such an iconic moment in that beautiful gown on the runway. I was so proud of you personally. Corina, same question for you. What was one of your favorite moments?
Yeah, first of all, I'd just like to start off by acknowledging that I'm calling in today from Wurundjeri country. I was very blessed to be born on this country and it holds a very special place in my heart. So for Australian Fashion Week, I think all of it was like incredible and amazing, but to be able to do it alongside with my daughter and she's been a huge part of this journey and she's been alongside me this whole time. And I think if you follow me on Instagram, I did make a bit of a post about how one of my favorite moments of Australian Fashion Week was after me and my daughter walked out and we came backstage and she just like relaxed into my arms and fell asleep listening to Dreaming Now, Neil, which is one of our cousins, play on stage while everyone was walking out. And I think that was just like a real moment of like we've done this together. And that was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah, it was so beautiful seeing you and your little girl walk out after your showcase. Congratulations on that. Sam, what about for you? What was your highlight?
My highlight would have to be being able to watch the first Indigenous runway, and Felicia, you were bloody amazing. I loved being able to experience that. And as you said, Fashion Week's been going for 25 years. And it's the first time there's ever been an Indigenous runway, which is amazing. But you think, wow, 25 years, why wasn't it done earlier? My other highlight would be to walk in the other Indigenous runway. And not only did I have my husband watching in the crowd, I had my little mum. They brought my mum down from Tweed Heads and she got to sit there and enjoy the show.
Yeah, it was so good to see your mum. You must have been so excited to see you hit the runway again. I know
she was so excited.
Yeah, it was amazing. And Liandra, what was your favourite moment?
I don't, like, as I was listening to everybody else, I don't think I have like one particular favorite moment. I think that there was, my heart just felt so full with the Wednesdays First Nation Fashion Design Show and our show. Like, I just felt so incredibly proud. And yeah, my heart was just like beaming of like pride for everybody that was involved with those two shows. I think, just being there, being able to have my label on the runway was a huge moment. I'm really passionate, and I moved Liandra Swim home to Milingimbi, which is a little island in Northeast Arnhem Land. And, I'm a younger woman, so I'm really, really passionate around you can still be successful and do things from a remote context. And, part of moving home, I wanted to put my, walk the walk and talk the talk. So being, taking my label and, I was like a little bit like, will I still be able to grow from Milingimbi? I'm so isolated from everyone and everywhere. But being able to come from, up here and travel down and have Liandra Swim on the runway and do it with, people, it filled my heart to, next to the people that were there on the runway with me and in both shows. I was really proud for us as a movement in the industry.
Yes, your runway showcase was a testament to that, what you've said, the hard work that you put in. So you should be very proud of what you did at Australian Fashion Week. So I would like to start with Corina. So you have a very successful children's label with Amber Days, and at Australian Fashion Week, we saw you expand into women's wear. How did that come about for you? And can you share what challenges as a designer you face getting into the industry, but also how you've overcome those?
Yeah, okay. So with women's wear, so I've done children's wear for 2 years now. Which has been really amazing, and I absolutely love children's wear. But I think at the beginning, I remembered like trying to find the name for Amber Days, and I was like, I had this other name picked out that kind of shut off moving into women's wear, which is really great that I didn't choose that, because as time went on, there was just so much demand for everyone's just like, when it like, without sounding ungrateful, but the amount of messages that I was writing back to with people being like, when are you going to do this in women's? I want this in women's, and not just women's, like in adults, sorry. And so it kind of just come organically with demand that we expand into adults wear as well. Yeah, and within challenges, I mean, that's like such a big, big question, but I think some of the main challenges for me personally to get into the fashion industry, one was just overcoming my blocks that I couldn't do it, and having the confidence to be like, I am able to be in this space. I think like, something growing up for the last, over 32 years of being told that as an Aboriginal woman, you don't belong in these spaces. This isn't a space for you. I grew up in a very low socioeconomic area, nobody was in business in my family and in my immediate circle, let alone in the fashion industry. So I think like overcoming those barriers and just being like, that's it, I'm going to do it. Alongside being a single mum, but at the same time being a single mum and so I've been a single mum from the start with my daughter, and I think that she actually like gave me the confidence to go in the space, which, being a challenge, but also, I think that was one of the reasons when I was just like, oh my God, I've birthed a child, I've done this all on my own. Of course I can start a label. And
Did you seek out any other people in the industry, like getting started? As you say, you found it hard to enter that space. Were there any moments where you found yourself reaching out to others that may have been in that space, or was it something like a slow progression for you to be able to release your first collections?
I guess there's like a few parts to that. So I was in campaigning and I've worked in community from leaving high school. So from the age of, well, I didn't even finish high school. Disclaimer, I didn't finish high school, don't have a degree. So I guess that was also a barrier for me getting into the industry. But I've always worked in community and around campaigning, and especially around Indigenous land rights so I guess all of those skills were very transferable into business, which, I didn't realize at the time. I think that, but then, also I think that it was really important to be able to see other Aboriginal women in the space leading. And I messaged Liandra yesterday. I was like, oh my God, we should be so proud of ourselves that we're sitting on this panel today. Like, I just had this moment of like, wow, we've watched Samantha Harris in, magazines. And that was really like, those bits that where you sit down as a young Aboriginal woman and see other Aboriginal women in these spaces. I guess that really, is really, really important. And then I was like, oh my God, Liandra, we're on this panel. We're part of those women now. Like, it was like a big wow moment. But definitely seeing other women lead the space is really important.
That's so great. Thank you so much for that. Speaking of leading the way, Samantha, as a successful model and icon of Australian fashion, how have you seen the First Nations fashion sector change, and what are some of your personal career highlights?
In the Indigenous fashion sector change, it's completely done a 360. When I first started modelling, I can't even think of any Indigenous fashion labels that were out there, which is very heartbreaking and very upsetting. But at the same time, there were no other Indigenous models out there either. There was just little old me, just trying to be a model. But, we've just had Fashion Week and, we've made history with the first 2 Indigenous runways incorporated in Fashion Week. Like, it's 2021. Why hasn't this happened sooner? So proud and so honoured that it has. But, it should have happened a long time ago. We're definitely moving forward within that kind of sector. We're seeing so many more beautiful models coming through the ranks and now designers. So, we've definitely seen a lot of positive change, but there's still more change to go. And, I can't wait to see it all unfold in the next few years.
Absolutely. What have some of those conversations been like behind the scenes with other people who are non-Indigenous in the fashion industry? I mean, you must have so many people ask you about what's just happened. What is the reaction from outside of our community? What has people been saying?
The reaction's been really positive. Everyone, again, they're thinking the same thing. They're like, why hasn't this happened sooner? Some of them have watched the show and said how spectacular the show was, which it was. And it was so much more than just your typical runway, because there were singers, there were dancers, there was a performance, and it's thousands and thousands of years of culture. So it's so much more than just a pretty dress walking down the runway. There's history, there's meaning behind it all. And I think for people to see that on the runway, even non-Indigenous people, I think it was a really proud moment for them also.
Yeah, and Sam, what are some of your career highlights that you hold dearest to you?
Some of my career highlights, I think my whole career has been a massive highlight, because ever since I was 4 years old, I've always wanted to be a model. I didn't have any other plan B, so thank God it worked. Just modelling in general, my Vogue cover, being the second Indigenous person to ever grace the cover of Vogue, was a very proud moment. And now being older and still being able to model, which I'm very proud to be able to do still so. But just seeing the other young models coming up through the ranks, as I said earlier, and, I'd like to hope that, I was the reason that they thought, maybe I could be a model and could follow my dreams just like Sam has.
Oh, well, I would say that's definitely true of you, Sam, by so many people, including myself. So we have Liandra. So Liandra, as a designer, businesswoman, and the owner of Liandra Swim, you work remotely. So how do you stay connected and relevant to your market?
Yeah, I think that, a big part of that is being consistent. And when I say consistent, it's behind the scenes consistency too. It's doing your market research. It's making sure you're watching what other people are doing, what are the color trends of, you know, the upcoming color trends, and staying relevant. And a lot of that is, doing your due diligence in research and kind of watching what's happening around you. Of course, being isolated, it is sometimes a challenge. You know, people will ask for something and I'm like, I can't get that to you. I need at least, you know, 8 days turnaround, you know, business days to be able to get an item in your hand, say for a photo shoot or something. But I think in saying that, I'm really kind of passionate around making people aware that if you're wanting, because there's amazing creatives, you know, there's artists, there's people in the textile space, in the fashion space, like there's amazing creatives in remote communities. And so if I can just help shed a light, I guess, around some of the logistics around what that means, then that makes me happy. But in terms of staying relevant, I think it's, you know, staying on Instagram and Facebook and making sure I'm also keeping an eye on what's happening around me and what the conversations are that are taking place, I guess, as well.
And I know for Liandra Swim, sustainability is a big part of your brand, and that's part of that conversation. How does sustainability and culture inform your swimwear designs?
Yeah, so when I talk about sustainability, I talk about it, I guess, in two ways. I'm talking about keeping a sustainable culture alive through and using fashion as the medium to do that. I'm talking about using, I guess, my swimwear as a platform to be able to share stories and create conversations and highlight the positive achievements of Indigenous women and those elements of what sustainability is. But also, around sustainability and the environment. So I'm always, and again, it's about doing your due diligence in research. I always say that I'm looking to do better and be better, just because, you know, I incorporate something right now. You know, unfortunately, fabric technology has only kind of gotten so far in 2021. So I'm always researching around what other fabric technologies are out there, because I use, my swimwear is made from recycled plastic bottles, which is great because it's recycling something that's not going anywhere soon. But, you know, there are issues around microplastics and other issues, you know, around in the swim, I guess, space, like sun creams that are damaging, you know, the reef systems and marine life. So it's about creating awareness as well as always looking of other ways that might just be better. And it's, you know, I'm always looking for kind of 12 months down the track. It's not going to be an overnight thing. But that's why I say I'm an eco-conscious label as opposed to, because I'm always conscious around what kinds of impacts I'm making. And I think that's something, I think that's a common thread amongst a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander labels. And I think it's something that's sort of ingrained in who we are. You know, when I look around, you know, we still go hunting. I'm lucky enough to live on Yolngu land, and we still go hunting all the time out on the mud flats for shellfish and crab and fish and, you know, all kinds of turtle. And I love that. And, you know, no one ever takes more than what they need. It's always enough to fill up, and it's never overfishing. It's never overdoing it. It's always about keeping the environment in balance. And our relationship with the environment, it's not just, oh, you know, I'm a human and that's a plant. In our culture, in Yolngu culture, we also have responsibility as land carers, and that might be that tree or that particular plant or that bird or that animal, we have a particular relationship, and I would call that plant, you know, mum in our kinship system. So it's going beyond, I guess, what you would, when I talk about being a sustainable and eco-conscious label, I really mean it, I guess, like an iceberg, if you want to talk about that metaphor. It's kind of what you see on the surface, but it's everything that I'm doing kind of underneath, and the way that I try and build the brand underneath, that I'm trying to create that foundation.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Liandra. Felicia, our deadly queen. It was so incredible to see you represent and to see the representation of the diversity within our people at Australian Fashion Week. So as a strong advocate for First Nations transgender equality, do you think this was a great step forward for the Australian fashion industry and for visibility?
I think most definitely, and especially being a part of, making history the first time ever in 25 years that Australian Fashion Week has had this happen. I think it's a great representation of Aboriginal culture as well, because, pre-colonization, pre the Bible and all these religious views, our mob got along here on this earth, and, we're the oldest living continuous culture on this earth. And, people wonder for how long, how did these people and how did these mob get along? And it was because we never had, views, and we never had these things in place where, trans people were always involved in mob. I've heard stories of trans people being involved back in kinship law and in law, LORE, our law. There's trans people involved in those stories. So it's like it's always been here, it's always been a part of our culture, but to be a part of it at Australian Fashion Week for me was the most amazing thing that could have ever have happened. And, like Sam said before, it's pretty crap that it's happening now in 2021, but it's still happening now, but it could have happened a long, long time ago. But let's just, celebrate now that it is happening, and let's just keep going bigger and better.
Yeah, so Felicia, what does that mean for yourself with younger generations coming through that have seen you on this runway? What do you hope for the future with that?
I just hope people see, me being my most authentic, unique self, and, getting out there and, challenging these conventional beauty standards that have been put in place by this westernized, colonial society. And I just hope that someone sees me, one little person at home sees me just being me up there, and they see that it's okay to be me, that, there's not a single another soul on this earth like you. So I just hope that they get out there and they give it their all and, challenge what society says that we can't do, because you can do anything if you really put your mind to it. Seeing Samantha Harris at Australian Fashion Week, for me, I never ever thought I'd be gracing Australian Fashion Week runway, and having her there, it was a pivotal moment for me, seeing someone who I used to idolize, I still do idolize, and hold her at a very high level, matriarchal trailblazers out there doing what they're doing. So I just hope somebody, views me as I used to view Sam, and still view Sam.
Oh, thank you.
I absolutely think they will be. And have you had any conversations with people in that community that, that are looking up to you, and you're leading the way for so many people?
I've had it quite a lot of conversations on social media. Still going through my requests now, just replying, and still to this day I'm still fathoming all of what has happened and what I've succeeded with Fashion Week and all the deadly mob there. So a big shout out to First Nations fashion design, Tegan Collinshaw, Grace Lillian Lee, Charlie, and yourself. If it wasn't for all of you deadly mob supporting one another, and a saying I've always said is, I don't rise unless we all rise. And that is the most amazing thing I've seen out of this, is mob supporting mob, and we're all standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, still striving and determined to share our culture, So that's the most amazing thing for me.
Thank you so much for that answer, Felicia. So now we're going to move on to a question of, what is your vision for the future of First Nations fashion and the industry? So Corina, I'd like to hear from you. What is your vision for the future?
Okay. Wow. Okay. So I think that one of my personal favorite things that is coming out of this is I'm really seeing that, when us as Indigenous people come into a space, I feel like we're finding our power, and we're kind of making it our space, and realizing that we don't have to fit within, I guess, a colonized space that wasn't necessarily made for us, but also that we can be in that space, if that makes sense. I feel like it's an amazing time where we can come in and make it ours, and choose, have the self-determination to be able to choose what fits within our values and what doesn't fit within our values, if that makes sense. So I think something that I've been what I feel really blessed as an Aboriginal woman to be in the fashion spaces. Like every day I get to work to my values. Like I get to make my business how it fits within me, and I'm not having to jeopardize my culture or whilst doing that. Did that answer that?
Yeah, no,
I really feel like the space is changing, and we're not just fitting into that space. We're coming in as us and holding our own space, if that,
Exactly. And I think what you're touching on is having that autonomy over that space that is led by First Nations people, our stories told by us, and we use our faces and our stories and our connection to culture, which is very important. And I'm glad to see you're doing that through Amber Days. It's so amazing. Sam, same question for you. What's your vision for the future of First Nations fashion in the industry, and what's next for Sam Harris?
My vision for the future, again, is to see more Indigenous runway shows in big fashion, kind of, like Australian Fashion Week, Melbourne Fashion Week, for Indigenous runway to be the norm. As crazy as it sounds that we are in 2021, to say that, the First Nations people to have a runway show in general, people are more kind of shocked or proud that it's happened, but why hasn't it been happening for 25 years, or even how long my career has been going for? So again, see that more on the runway, more on the world stage, and to showcase to not only Australia and to the rest of the world how special our culture is. Again, as I said earlier, it's not just your typical beautiful garment. There's so much history, so much love, and so much culture in it that everyone needs to enjoy, and I want everyone to appreciate.
Yeah, I feel like our stories translate so well to fashion design that it is crazy that we haven't seen this in the 25-year history.
Yeah.
Sam, do you feel like we want to get to the point where we have designers who are Aboriginal having their own showcases at Fashion Week?
That would be absolutely amazing. The runway shows this year were incredible, but again, to have one designer, Kirikan or Liandra Swimwear, to just have their own runway show, I think would be spectacular, because again, we're just showcasing and showing everyone how beautiful their designs are and their stories behind their collection. And it just needs to happen more often, and people just need to keep talking about it and just keeping the conversation going and just embracing it, and just not just have it, out of the blue, there's an Indigenous runway show in Sydney Fashion Week. Hopefully for years to come, this will be the normal, and people will be looking forward to seeing these beautiful designs showcased on the Australian fashion industry.
Yeah, I feel like it would be a great time to be able to have, we've had that first Welcome to Country, which was emotional for everybody. And it was just such a great way to kick off Fashion Week. It could move into the space where we have the first opening show of runway being the Indigenous shows, and then the closing show would be the other. And hopefully through the middle of the week, we have other designers.
Exactly.
That would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, the sky's the limit. We can only keep going up. Like, it's already been incredible, but just think in 5 years how far we would come.
Yeah, and that space is kind of growing too, even with people who are in the production side of things as well. Like, we're seeing a lot more mob be involved in not just being the models or the design.
More behind the scenes and backstage and things like that, which is incredible, which is obviously what this talk is about as well. It's not just fashion, fashion designers and models and things like that. There's so much more within the fashion industry space that, young people could be aspiring to be like.
Yeah, those pathways are really opening up, and you can see that there's so many young people that want to be involved in all those different aspects. And for me, I think that having that lens of an Indigenous lens or a First Nations lens, that will provide the consistency that we need to see in the fashion industry, because it makes us more visible and it makes us more concrete in the industry. And, for yourself, you've got such a long career. The consistency of what Sam Harris brings to the industry keeps that conversation going. So we're going to have more people entering, and it's going to be more, more exciting. And, as you said, the sky's the limit. So we can't wait to see that keep happening. Liandra, what about for yourself? What's your vision for the future of First Nations fashion?
I guess so much of what Corina and Sam I really absolutely agree with. When I think of myself in terms of what I'm trying to create for Liandra Swim, I'm really trying to carve out a label that, and I'm not trying to say in a negative way, but I'm not just an Indigenous label. I'm a swimwear label. I'm here for I'm looking 10 years into the future. I want to be up there next to Zimmerman. I want to be up there next to, those iconic swimwear labels, Jets. And when you think of the landscape of swimwear in Australia, and I mean, Bondi Beach, people know us for our beautiful beaches and what we have in regards to swimming. And I want people to, think of, I've got a Liandra swim piece, and it's something that they, are proud to have it, and it adds so much more value. Every little, every collection that I have is unique. It's limited edition. It's a wearable piece of art, but it's also premium designer swimwear. It's top quality. And so I want people to buy Liandra Swim because of the premium designer quality and the value that sits behind the fabrics and the stories. And you know what? It's actually, it's hard sometimes to balance that. I'm kept highly accountable in my culture and in my family. I have, people question me, and that's great. I love that. My family holds me highly accountable for what I do. So I'm not just running around doing whatever I want. I'm incredibly mindful of the brand that I'm trying to carve out. And for me, like Sam said, I think that in the future, I'm a small label. So I think in the future of when I think about growing, absolutely one day I want to have, my own runway show. And I'm not saying that because I don't want to be next to my sisters and my brothers up there on the runway. It's just because I think it would be so cool that, we're not just, we're not trending for right now, and we're not some type of token gimmick, if you will, because it's a hot topic. We're here to stay. We're going to be here. And I'm really proud to be a part of this movement in 2021. It's coming off the backs of a lot of other designers and creatives that have been around for a lot longer than what I have. And I'm thankful for their hard work, in the 80s and the 90s. And I'm glad to be a part of these conversations in 2021, and in 2031 and in 2041.
Yeah. That's so great. Yeah. Sort of like normalizing what your label is to the industry from a business perspective is probably very key to the sustainability and, the strength of this sector moving forward. What, as you said, you're a premium swimwear label. That's such a credit to you. And you happen to be an Indigenous label as well. Like, those things are like, we cannot overlook those things.
Absolutely. I think it, only adds more power to the label, because it does, it does add an extra, I guess, layer. Sometimes it's a complex layer, but it's a really beautiful and powerful layer. And I think that, I'm so proud of who I am and where I come from. So I'm forever grateful for that. But I think that it's really cool to be a part of that right now.
Definitely an exciting time to be in this moment, isn't it? Felicia, same question for you. What is your vision for the future of First Nations fashion in the industry? I think you're on mute, Felicia.
There we go, I'm back. Just going off the back of what Liandra was saying, for mob to, not only just see these labels as Indigenous label. Ooh, am I still there? Hello? Oh,
yeah, you're back.
My phone's just glitching and stuff. Just going off the back of what Liandra was saying, not just viewing these labels and these designers as Indigenous labels. I want these labels and these designers to be as big as, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and it's coming to, the international platform when people around the world are going to be talking about these labels. And at least that would make me so happy, because I know these people are going in and learning more about these labels and designers, and they're going to learn so much more about Aboriginal and Indigenous First Nations culture. And for me, that is going to be the next big thing, you know, more mob to be learning about us here. You know, they tried to wipe us out that many years ago, but we're still here today. We've been here since the first sunrise, and we're going to be here to the very last. So the more that people are getting educated around First Nations people, and you know, to be normalized to see trans models up there, genderless, with their nipple slips like I was with that big dress on, and, you know, normalizing trans people in, you know, these sectors and in these environments where we haven't been accepted before. So just for us to keep breaking down stigmas and smashing these barriers and just, you know, being visible, for me is, you know, the move that I really want to see in the fashion industry.
Yes, the LGBTQI plus community has been so integral to what is happening in the fashion industry ever since it started, you know. So having that visibility is so key to the future. And, you know, Felicia, you represent that for us as well. So we're really proud of you and, you know, what you did at Australian Fashion Week. It's such a credit to you. So let's move on to another question. Oh, no, let's continue. Yeah.
Sorry, just really quickly, I guess because Felicia and Sam, you know, being the models and in a lot of ways being the faces, it's also such an important part of the puzzle of how we're kind of cutting out the industry. It's, you know, when I think of myself, it's making sure that I'm trying to incorporate models. You know, my last campaign had 2 amazing Yolngu models on Yolngu country. And it's trying to, you know, have the faces there as well, because that is another part of it. And, you know, that's, I think, what, you know, the First Nations Fashion Design Show, having the lineup of models that they did, showed the diversity of beauty, you know, that is across the country. And I think that's so incredibly powerful. And, you know, I think of myself as a young Black woman, a girl, and I never really came across anybody that looked like me or sounded like me. And so I'm really excited to see that for the next generation. So yeah, I think that, you know, what Sam and Felicia have done and helped to carve out is so powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's what they've done is so amazing. So, you know, on that note, it's Corina, what advice can you give to our younger generations aspiring to enter the fashion industry?
Before I step into that, I just want to back onto that about being backstage at Australian Fashion Week with all the Indigenous models, all the Indigenous, everybody around, and my daughter being there, and like that was just an incredibly powerful moment. And Saf's like to Felicia, she's like, "Oh, you look like," I can't remember what Disney princess, and like,
I think it was Tiana, the Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, and I was just like, it's just so beautiful that this is who my daughter's surrounded by right now, and how powerful that is for her as an Aboriginal young girl and her identity. And what was the question again?
Oh, that's so kind of, that's such a beautiful story, like to have that younger generation see our mob in that space collectively. That's so powerful. It is really, really powerful. My question is what advice can you give to the younger generations aspiring to enter the Australian fashion industry? That could be from a designer perspective or other.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is recognizing your power as an Indigenous person. I think at the very start of my journey, shamefully, like I went into my very first meeting trying to channel what at the time felt like the biggest power that I could channel, which was a middle-aged white male, trying not to offend anybody, but that was the power that I really like channeled into myself to go into this first meeting about telling people that I wanted to, as an Indigenous woman, start an ethical label that, you know, obviously when we all know that like ethical and sustainable labels aren't your most profit-driven way into the fashion industry. And thinking that I wasn't going to get listened to. So I really like channeled this like male, like what I felt was power at the time, male energy, and went into this meeting. And although it went really well and I got people's attention and they listened to me and they decided that what I had to say was valid and that it was a good business model, when I left, I felt really wrong. And in that time, I saw Jira Harvey speak the next week and watched her energy. And I was just like, geez, this woman has so much power. And I recognized at that time that us as Indigenous people and us as Indigenous women have this incredible power that is so much bigger than any white male power that I was channeling at the time. And I think like my biggest advice is to tap into that power. Like we have, like everyone's been saying in this talk, you know, we've got the longest living culture of 60,000 plus years, and our women and communities have been strong throughout that, and channeling into that is like, yeah, it's a power that I can't explain. And I think to like, you know, young in particular young women that are wanting to come into the space, I think just tapping into that power and also just going for it. We deserve to be there. We have, all the women behind us, all of their community. And I think that, just go for it and tap into that power.
Yeah. Do you think in that reaching out to other people in your community is a very helpful way to start?
Oh, 100%. And I think that that's what's really beautiful. Like, you know, my favorite part about my label is just the networks and the community that we have created of support. And there's a huge community of women and everyone, Indigenous, you know, businesses that are really there backing you and want to see you succeed. Like we've said, like, you know, that's the core of our values. Like, we don't, like Felicia said before, I can't remember exactly. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, so my head's like a little bit blank at the moment. But you said something about how, you know, all of us collectively coming up together. And I think that that's something that most Indigenous businesses and Indigenous designers hold at the core. Like, you know, we don't want to succeed individually. We want to succeed as a collective. And that's always been at the core of my business. Like, I want to give whatever I get, I want to give back. And I want to see us all come up together. So reaching out to, other designers, other businesses is definitely a great place to start.
Definitely. Sam, what advice would you have for younger generations wanting to enter the industry?
The advice I would have to younger generations wanting to enter the fashion industry, again, they don't necessarily have to want to be a model. It could be more behind the scenes in the fashion industry, is again, try and reach out to, you know, other Indigenous or just other people within the industry that are following the same path that you wish to follow in your career. Just be true to yourself. I know the fashion industry can be a bit of a whirlwind and, you know, can look to, you know, from the outside looking in can look like, you know, well, it's not the real world, it's the fashion world. But just be humble and true to yourself and keep pushing. You know, when I started modelling when I was 4 years old, which is very young, I used to do beauty pageants on the Gold Coast, which is where I'm from. And I would always make the finals in these particular pageants, but I would never, ever win. The girl that would win would be, you know, the blonde hair, the blue eyes, typical beachy kind of Gold Coast. Apparently Indigenous people can't be beachy. But again, with saying, you know, just keep pushing and pushing because I remember I'd cried to my mum. Why wasn't I good enough? Like, why am I not picked? I'm always make the finals, but not picked. And that kind of, you know, tore down my confidence as a young girl. But my mum would always tell me, you know, just keep pushing, just keep going. You'll get there. You'll eventually get there. Sometimes it might feel like that you're not. And I know I did feel like that when I was younger, but keep striving for something that you're really passionate about and something that you believe you can do and you can make a difference and you'll eventually get there. Like, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. Like, you know, it's something that you really want and you're really passionate about. It will take time, but the end result will be so much worth it.
Absolutely. I think for this industry, we know that we get a lot more no's than we do yeses. So,
yes,
you know, and it's never like my advice as well is like, it's from a model perspective is that don't take it personal. Don't get why didn't I get that job? Like you show up to a casting and you think, oh, I have a good feeling about this one, you know, and you go back home and you get all excited, you know.
And then you see someone else has got the job and you're like, oh, damn it.
And then you see the job come out and you're like, oh, all right then.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. But I think the good thing to know is that, like Corina said, you know, lean into your power of your identity and just trust the process sometimes. I think like that consistency of working and knowing that might not be the job for you, but there's another one around the corner.
Exactly. And just believe in yourself as well. I think sometimes we have, well, you know I can be sometimes like you don't believe in yourself as much as you should. You know, you can see other people around you and you think, oh, you know, they're doing so much more than me, or they're, you know, I wish I was like that person, or, you know, try and strive to be somebody that you're not. And I think with social media these days, you see the highlights of people's pages and everything looks rosy and lovely. But in actual fact, it's not the real world. Like they're just showing you the highlights. So just believe and, as you said, trust in the process and you'll eventually get there.
Absolutely. Liandra, what advice would you have?
Yeah, I guess I definitely agree with what Corina and Sam had said. You know, networking is incredibly powerful. It's sometimes, and a lot of the time, who you know and how you can get in contact with somebody else is, your network is so valuable. I would actually say in a lot of ways that was my biggest help, particularly in the early days. It was the advice from people and the insights that people were able to give me. But my biggest advice would be absolutely, you are, you know, wanting to go into the fashion industry, but, you know, if you're wanting to start a label, it's a business as well. You need to get those skills in business, understand the money story, understand your customer, understand how all of those pieces fit together. I remember being like, oh, I want to be an overnight success, you know, and then I was talking to somebody and they were like, do you? And I was like, yeah, because, you know, it'll make everything so much easier. But my biggest piece of advice as well is not wanting to be an overnight success, because by taking your time, it allows you to put the logistics in place that you need to be a sustainable business, not just kind of like a one-hit wonder. And it's understanding, you know, how do you create a strong brand? Think about the story you're trying to create and how do you communicate that to your buyer or to your customer. I'm really big, you know, I think I'm really lucky in the sense that my mom and my stepdad, I was exposed to what it means to run a business growing up. And so I saw the hard work that they put in. I think that, you know, I was kept accountable as this really strong, proud Yolngu woman. I also, though, my mom kept me as a role model. I was like, as a woman, as a person, I can achieve whatever I want, because look, she did, my stepdad did, my dad did. I've got a lot of people in my family that I was able to, I guess, look at and pick, you know, those elements and their successes. So it definitely was exposure. But my biggest thing would be, as you know, a lot of people that go into the fashion industry, I think there's an element of, it's something that they enjoy. So it comes easy to design, to print, to be in front of the camera or wherever it is that you're hoping to be. My biggest thing is make sure you're building your business skills. I spent 12 months doing a business accelerator program with IBA, and I learned so much. And I was so grateful for that experience because it really helped me build a strong foundation. So yeah, I think the other thing that people don't realize in fashion, especially when you're starting a label, it's incredibly expensive. And, you know, to budget for it and think about it. Think about where are you going to get the money from? You know, you're going to dip into savings. Are you going to ask for a loan? You know, how are you going to fund it? Because it is expensive. You know, it goes beyond making the clothes. How are you going to market it? How are you going to, you know, influencers are, you know, a lot of them don't just gift a product. You have to pay. And it's all of those parts. How are you going to have a website? It like that. For me, it's like I want people to also think about I guess, the business side and the logistics side of how you're going to operate behind the scenes as well. Because it's one thing to get started, which I really am like, just get started. Don't let, excuses, but work on those skills that you need to be able to be around for a while.
Yeah, acquiring those skill sets is so important. And I think, speaking the language of fashion is very important. So there's a way to conduct yourself around, as you said, the business of fashion. And I know from my perspective, and Sam, you could probably relate, how you go to a casting or how you, with people on set, you make sure you say hello to everyone on set. And there's a lot of pressure on the model to carry the day a lot of the times. So understanding those little nuances within what that language of fashion means in that business of fashion. And like you said, if you are a slow burn and you're not an overnight success, you acquire that skill set. So that's such great advice, that patience will build up to a point that is, creates longevity.
It's really funny, just really quickly, because my biggest piece of advice that I walked away and I was like, oh, bang, light bulb moment, was actually with like a 60-year-old Aboriginal man that was in the agriculture space and had been running this like multi-million-dollar business. And I was just like talking to him around, I was like, oh, I've got to like sell all this product and like I'm like broke and like blah, blah, blah. And he was like, hold on a minute. He's like, you've just moved your money from the bank and now you've invested it in here, And so he really helped me change my mindset around how I was looking at money within the space as well. So, I definitely think that it's the business of fashion, but don't discount, because I nearly did. And it was one of my most valuable conversations. And that's why I think networking is so key. Talk to lots of different people, because sometimes opinions can, a white noise in the background, but sometimes you might just get like a little pearl of wisdom that will keep you, going through the years to help you. So.
Absolutely. And I think on top of that, as you say, networking and those connections are so important. Sam, I keep tying you in, but that relationship, as if you want to enter as a model, that relationship you create with your agent is very important too, isn't? So how do you feel about what advice you have for models that want to what's a good way, good advice for continuing a good relationship with an agent?
Good advice to continue a good relationship with an agent. Well, I've been with my agency since I was 13. I'm now 30. Same agency, and they're like family. I've known them for so long. They've watched me grow up. So I'm very lucky and very fortunate to have, I guess, a second family basically. But with models to retain a good relationship with their agency, I guess also because there's so many modeling agencies out there nowadays. You have the bigger ones, you have the smaller ones, but you've also got to be mindful what agency you do go to, because not all agencies will have your best interest at heart. So I think in that aspect, be mindful of where you go, and again, networking with other agencies and other people in general. But just find someone that that will have your best interest at heart, and wants to help you be successful and things like that. And then I think the good relationship just kind of goes hand in hand, because you've got a great agency that is supportive and wants to be there for you. So I think the good relationship will just naturally evolve and naturally grow.
That's great advice. And Felicia, what advice do you have for the aspiring young generation?
I just think to not think too much and to not let society construct the way that you go out and that you follow a dream, and put yourself into any environment or anywhere. Don't let any constructed ways that this society makes us go out and live our lives affect anything that you want to do in this world. I never thought I would be out there walking down Australian Fashion Week runway, and being there with Sam Harris and Jessica Mauboy backstage, and just doing all the things that I did, walking out there with Charlie Fraser. Never, ever, ever think that anything that you're doing is wrong. We're going to go out and we're going to do many things wrong in life, but we don't grow and we don't do things in life if we're not moving out of our comfort zone and failing at some things. It's okay to fail, and it's okay to do some things wrong sometimes, and that's just how we grow as people. But to also grow and to heal as people, we need to share. you know, where we have gone wrong in some instances in the past. But yeah, just go out, live life to the fullest every day, and go out and grab and reach for those stars, because you never know what you could be doing in this world. I didn't think I'd be doing what I'm doing at my age that I am right now, but I am. And people told me I couldn't, but, you know, I didn't let that get in the way of, you know, my dreams. So go out and just kill it and give it your all. And remember that, you know, if you're out there, a little Corey, trying to, you know, go and strive for your dreams, that, you know, people didn't want us here. You know, they try to wipe out Aboriginal people, but we're still here to this day. So go out and, you know, prove the world wrong.
That's such beautiful advice. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our panel discussion with Indigenous Business Australia. I want to thank everybody for being here. We have Samantha Harris, we have Felicia Foxx, we have Liandra Gaykamangu, and Corina Muir. Thank you, everyone, and I look forward to many more talks with IBA, and enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.